I'm here today with Troy Norr, aka KK Foster of Dem, to talk about Fear City, out right now on Steam Hammer.
Hello, my friends.
Wow, ready for this talk, ready for this chat. I've been looking forward to a very long time of having you on the channel. And let me start off by asking you this. What drove you or carried you or transported you, whatever it is that you want to use, to New York City, 1981, Fear City?
I'll let Troy speak on my behalf. Oh, so KK, he actually goes, at the end of the Return to Hemsmore, he actually dies. Okay, the Crimson Corpse, who has been trailing his soul from Sweet Hollow, the first record, he finally tricks KK into thinking that KK had resurrected his daughter's soul into the body of Mary Hawthorne. However, once KK realized it was too late, he just yells out his last words to his trusty assistant, Remsen. He yells out, "Remsen, don't forget your bloodline. Your bloodline, Remsen." And in the song Encore, which was released by Steam Hammer back in December of 2021, it goes into a little bit more detail where Remsen, his assistant, is lost without his master. And KK speaks a few more words of wisdom, and he tells him that Remsen must continue his bloodline. He has seed to sow. His bloodline is of great importance to their future. So 120 years pass, and what happens? There's a toxic chemical spill that occurs right outside the town of Hemsmore, right at the very site KK was sucked into the ground by the Crimson Corpse. KK miraculously comes back. He comes back and he's in a different time period, knowing fully well that time has passed him by, and he's overwhelmed with the technological advancements that he sees before him. He hunts down his actual trusty assistant's descendant, who is Ronaldo. And Ronaldo is an 80s elitist in New York City, and he has to go to New York City to find his assistant, his new assistant, and continue the task at hand, which was to destroy the Thompson bloodline. Peter Thompson actually was the individual, the witch hunter from Matter of the Seven Gables, who actually reveals to KK that KK, he killed his entire family back at the Hemsmore witch trial in the beginning of Sweet Hollow. So KK travels to New York City, 1981, completely overwhelmed with all this technology, not understanding its sorcery. And he actually goes and he finds his new trusty assistant, Ronaldo, and tells Ronaldo. And Ronaldo's already aware because the word has been passed down the bloodline that KK may come one day. And KK comes, and him and Ronaldo go on their quest. They find Valerie, a streetwalker, a prostitute in 1981, and she is the one who knows where Minister Thompson, the descendant of the evil witch hunter Peter Thompson, and she knows his whereabouts because she has slept with him. So they go on their quest together, the three of them, to hunt down Minister Thompson and destroy, so KK can destroy him. Well, little do they know, at the tail end of the story, there's a little twist there because KK is taken off guard because Minister Thompson was also aware that this day could possibly happen, and he was waiting for him, and is unveiled at the very tail end of the story that Minister Thompson, he was a televangelist of the 80s, as everybody around him knew. However, he was really the underground crime pin of New York City. Who knows what will happen next?
I was actually just going to ask you that, because listening to Fear City, the end of the album is like this massive cliffhanger. So where is KK going next? Where do you see his path leading him next?
The only thing I can tell you is that it is not going to be a cookie cutter or it's not going to be something similar to the way the first 3 records went. A lot of people, a lot of critics, a lot of reviewers, a lot of fans felt that it was a trilogy. It was not a trilogy. The entire storyline from Sweet Hollow, Man of the Seven Gables, Return to Hemsmore, and now Fear City is one complete continuous journey of this lost soul, KK Foster, trying to grieve his family, put them to rest finally, and destroy who has and what has destroyed them. So who knows where it could go, what it could, well, I mean, I know, but I can't reveal that.
When it comes to building an album like Fear City, do you have an idea for what you want each song to put forward as far as the storytelling is concerned? Or does the storytelling define the sort of sound that you create for those tracks?
Well, the music complements what is going on in the story, and it drives the mood. So with the music, since we're a band, first and foremost, music is always number one. The music must be able to stand alone on its own without a concept behind it. So that's what we've always been trying to achieve. Some people will like it, some people will not like the aesthetics, some people might not like the little interludes that we include on every single one of our albums, but there's a meaning and there's a purpose for that. And that is just to help assist with the story and to drive the story and to help the listener become engrossed into the story. There are bands, and I'm not naming names, I love music, I love heavy metal, just like all of us do, but you know, a lot of bands, they'll tend to write the same style songs, the same, the same beats, the same, the same feel or similar feels. With us, you never know what will happen, okay? Because we try to be very dynamic. And again, the dynamics directly correlate and align with what's happening with the story, or so we try to do that. And as time goes on, we evolve further, and we try to just more tightly integrate the music with the story. And this time we were going for more of like, in some of the passages, musical passages, like a John Carpenter feel, back, to align with the time period. And so that's where we're at.
I said at the end of my review that, you may argue if you like a song, if you like an album, if you like the band. I mean, everything is subjective to taste and to people's individualities. But one thing I don't think anybody can argue is how good you guys are at putting these concept records together. I think that's something everybody should agree on, and then we can move forward from that point on. What is the most challenging and difficult thing about creating records like you guys have created, specifically now even with Fear City? It feels like it's a lot of work. What is the most challenging?
I think the most challenging out of everything, it's not even the music. The music comes from our heart and our soul. We love doing what we do, and that just comes very naturally. What becomes a little bit more complicated is the storyline, and how the storyline might include some previous passages or previous excerpts from the previous albums. So that way, when the listener sits down and maybe they want to have a them day, around Halloween. And what they do is they can actually take the albums and lay them out, and they have all lyrics in front of them, and it actually helps tell the story. We want the entire product, okay? We'll call it a product at the moment, but we want the entire thing to be a work of art, where it's the music, it's the art, it's the lyrics, it's the story, everything engrosses the listener and brings them into, a different place while they're listening to the music. And if that's not for them, they can just listen to, the songs as we have them listed, separately, and they could just enjoy the music. So the story and the storytelling itself is probably, I would think, the most complicated. Everything else falls into place once we know where KK Foster shall go.
Speaking of KK Foster, knowing what he knows now, if he could, instead of traveling forward in time, if he could travel back in time Is there something that he would have completely changed?
If he could go back in time, I would believe that he would go back to the point before uh, Peter Thompson killed his wife and his daughter Miranda. He burned them alive at the stake during the Hammersmith witch trial, and that is one time that he is just really, really battling within himself. He beats himself up over it. He is just distraught. His whole existence is just tortured by that moment. So he would go back in time to change that, but he can't. He does have powers. He does have the ability to do, cast spells. He's a warlock by faith, but he was a grave digger by trade. He wishes he could go back, and he tries everything within his power to bring back his daughter twice, and he has failed. And so now he's at a point where he's not trying to use his powers really at this stage in the game in Fear City, because he's trying to get acclimated with the time period that he's in, because to him everything is just so overwhelming at the moment.
When it comes to this record, when it comes to Fear City, you mentioned that you write the music and it's different every single time, like you try to create that uniqueness to it. What do you see on this record that sets itself apart, perhaps more so than any other record before?
So on this record, I would say the more prominent keyboard parts really distinguish it in a different place as opposed to the last three records. All of our records, all four records, always included our keyboardist Richie Zybel. And Richie is a fantastic player. He has incredible chops, and he plays in other groups as well. However, when we first started, Richie played more atmospheric passages and more laid back and more in the background to add atmosphere, to add a solid foundation to what was going on, which was more predominantly guitar work. In this record, Richie definitely stands out. He shines. And especially in one song on the album called Graffiti Park, where it has a keyboard solo that you can put it up against any guitar solo on any of our albums, and it's one of my favorite parts in the whole record.
It's interesting that you went there, because that's kind of where I wanted to go next. Now, you may have a different opinion, you may have a different view, but I want to share mine. And that mine was that the first half of the album I felt was very keyboard driven. The second half of the album felt a little bit darker. It had a different experience. Is that driven by where the story started and where the story went, or is there a different reason behind it?
That's very interesting you said that. That was intentional. See, because when KK first starts his trek, he makes several stops. He makes several stops, one being at Studio 54, which is Retro 54, and him and Ronaldo have to locate and find Valerie. Once they find Valerie, starting at Graffiti Park, they actually pursued by Minister Thompson, or Kingpin Thompson's men. And all these men are actually notified through code, through the radio DJ passages, an ear for an action, and also stay tuned. So that way, by the time KK gets to Minister Thompson's lair, his men, whatever men that are within his lair, are ready to apprehend KK. Everything is calculated and orchestrated, so that whole second part actually becomes a darker passage throughout their journey, their continued journey. So yes, that's why the way you perceive it is exactly the way it was intended.
And there was no other way around it. You don't see any other way around it in order to be able to create the sound that's going to give life to the story and to where you're going within it.
Well, yes, you can. There are obviously different ways, to express what you're trying to, the point you're trying to relay. What we've always been about not dictating. We want things to be created freely. All of our parts are created freely, that we have a map. We actually work off of a mapping system where we have BPMs for each song, and how the song is going to flow and what path it's going to take really dictates how many beats per measure is going to be in the song. And we have various styles that we want to incorporate. If you notice in our previous albums, actually the last two albums, we have usually like one song that's like more of a commercial like song. And then we have, the other end of the spectrum, and then anything and everything in between. So we like diversity. We like to express in a diverse manner. We like to, but also trying to keep the alignment with the story as best as we can. So as far as the darker half of the second, I think a lot of that also really comes from the crossing of Hellgate Bridge, which actually happens to be over a 9-minute song, almost pushing a 10-minute mark. So that song really, if you think about it, it could be almost 3 songs, 2.5, 3 songs right there. And that song is definitely a darker song. And a lot of the critics really like that song. To us, we consider that like a sleeper song, sleeper potential hit in a sense. We never thought of it that way, but the one person who's really responsible for that song is Marcus Johansson. He wrote that song, and originally I thought it was going to be an instrumental, but they said no, they want it to be, part of the story. And we have a few other songs that we recorded that will be bonus tracks, probably with the Japanese release and maybe a South American release, and then those bonus tracks as well that are also part of the story, but they're side songs. And those songs will probably we're talking about an EP coming out maybe next, in between the next set of records.
Wow, that's really interesting. You mentioned the keyboards. I want to mention the guitars, because I thought the guitar solos, the sound of the guitars, really on point from start to finish. You probably don't feel as much of an impact in the first half as you do in the second half, but the guitar is phenomenal. How much of that it comes from all the work that you guys do ahead of time in terms of creating the songs, building the songs, and then deciding exactly what kind of sound, what kind of impact you want that guitar experience to be like?
Yeah, so the actual songs themselves, all of them are all demoed. They're all demoed. We have demos of every single song on every single record. And that at that time, that's when we as a group will decide what, if there are any changes that are needed, where it could fit in the story, that sort of thing. And I'll usually work with Markus Ulrich, also known as Ule, and he's the German guitar player. And we have this mechanics that we have, even though we're half the band is in Germany and the other half is in America. We just have this mechanics that we work through the internet, and we record separately. And it's this sound, the overall sound is actually not dictated by us. It's dictated by Dave Otero from Flatline Audio, and he's based out in Colorado, and he's actually mixed and mastered and produced all of our records, and he's done a fantastic job, and it keeps getting better and better and better.
I agree. I would have to agree with that, and I would say you guys should stick with that formula, because it works really well for you, and the results are visible as far as the guitar and everything else is concerned. I really like the ability to dissect the record sound-wise when you guys put it together, taking nothing away from the storytelling aspect at the same time. And speaking of the storytelling aspect, nobody tells stories better than you. When it comes to vocals, how do you manage a vocal performance on an album like this, where there's so much diversity, where there's so much to tell, and being able to tell that story becomes such a huge part of what the listener is going to walk away with?
So usually, well, first of all, I've been working with a different engineer other than Dave Otero, only because of the geographic distance that's between us. I'm in New York and he's in Colorado. So I've been working with Joe Sincata from Full Force Studio. He's worked with bands like Suffocation and Obituary, and he's a great guy, and he has a great studio. And when I go in, he saves so much time. Usually takes about 2 to 2.5 hours for a 3 to 4 minute song. The crossing of Hellgate Bridge, which I thought was going to take over 5 hours, actually took 3.5, which was very, interesting. But regardless, I have to prepare myself. I mean, some singers, they have to prepare themselves mentally, physically, but I do all that, but I also have to make sure I have everything mapped out, all the lyrics, ready to go. He has a copy, I have a copy. We have, charts of, again, the BPMs, and we have, it's like almost like a project, like a work project, but we view it, we don't view it as a work project, we view it as fun. We really enjoy it. Again, we just love doing what we do, and people that love it, that's even better. I mean, we get to enjoy it together.
Is there do you have a specific outline of where you want the vocal mix to be, depending on who's coming through in the mix, as far as the characters that are part of this storyline?
Yes, there's definitely a mapping with that as well. So just to give you an idea, when I go in to record my vocals, I'll record 30 to 40 tracks for each song. That's a lot. That includes harmonies, background, like background harmonies, backups, might be gang vocals. We also have other people that come in later on if there's any actual gang. Since me being from New York, a lot of the gang vocal style originated from around these parts, with a lot of the New York heavier bands, so you got hardcore metalcore bands, and I've always dug that aspect. That I use gangs where we're trying to emphasize a point, that sort of thing. But as far as really the levels, again, that's up to Dave Otero, but I will work with him on that. Usually, he does his preliminary mixes, and then really it's like the last, I would say, 3 days before he's ready to put it to print, so to speak. He will, we'll get together, whether I'll fly there to Colorado or I'll do it remotely now, because now technology allows you to do that. And then what we do is we go through those songs. I'll listen, not only me, but some of our other band members as well will listen on different sources to really critique what we feel as a listener. Is something missing? Is something too low? Something too high? And then we provide feedback to Otero, and then he'll make adjustments. Sometimes we have a little debate, but most of the time he'll make, he's in charge of the project, and we make recommendations, but it mainly comes from myself and Ule, from Germany at that time, the last time. But so the levels, everything's calculated, listened to. Everything has to be just right when we feel that it's right and ready, and then it's good.
When it comes to the records and to KK's story that it's outlined throughout these records, is it easy or difficult to take the story of KK and convert it into lyrics? How is that? Because I feel like those are two almost separate worlds. There's the story, and then there's turning the story into a record. How do you balance those worlds?
Well, first and foremost, you have to work, again, like what I was telling you before about all the different types of mappings we have. This is no different. So what I do is I usually have a whiteboard that's tremendous, okay, that I have in my home studio. And on the whiteboard, I'll write out all the song titles and summarize what is happening in that part of the story. And when I have this whiteboard up, I sit down, I'm looking at it, I'm listening to the music. That's when I'll use that as a reference, and I'll write out the lyrics. But what I do first is I'll always create a vocal mapping for every single song prior to writing the actual lyrics. So it's like recorded, like if you listen to a lot of our demos, it sounds like scat singing, where it's no discernible words that are used, in the songs. But ultimately, what you hear in the final product, there's lyrics, and it sounds better, and it's it's like better, like everything is better, obviously. But it's just, again, the whole whiteboard is like really, really important in the whole process for me as a lyricist. Now that's a different role, right? So you have someone who might create the vocal melodies. Some bands, it might be the guitar player, it might be the drummer, but and the other guys, don't get me wrong, when it comes to vocal melody, even if they have any ideas with a lyrics or lyric or something like that, or a title, anything, everything's up for grabs because we work together as a team. It's a team effort. So it doesn't matter. It just because I'm doing the lyrics and the vocal mapping, I'm doing that, but it doesn't mean that they can't inject an idea that is better, that's great, or that's awesome, and then we would use it. And that has happened. And it doesn't mean that I couldn't hum a guitar part to one of the guitar players saying, hey, look, or even pick up the guitar and play it and say, hey, what about this over that part? That could happen too. So we're open to ideas to flow, because if we're so close-minded and so regimented, it's not going to be what it is.
Yeah, it's about serving the music, not necessarily about serving the musicians from that perspective. Is there a song on this record that, for whatever reason, musically, vocally, lyrically, connects with you differently?
Connects with me differently. I would say I really like the song 191st Street. And the reason why I like that, it's actually
one of my favorites, by the way.
Really? Wow, that's great. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. 191st Street, I really thought that that song is definitely more progressive in nature than some of the other songs, because we have one song on there that could be like almost like death metal, the music, not necessarily the vocals, but you have like doom metal influences. There's thrash, there's death metal influence, and then there's progressive metal. So it's amazing. But I think this song 191st Street, I connect with it differently because I think it's the most progressive that them has written. And me personally, I would never say, okay, I'm going to play progressive metal in a progressive metal band. I never once ever thought I would ever sing on a song that's progressive metal. But what I do is I do me, so the music might be that. I might not sing like that. I have different styles. I sing clean, I sing harsh, I shout, I yell, I do falsetto, I do all different types of styles. And I use the styles depending on how I feel, like what the mood is trying to be relayed at that moment in time within the story, and also what sounds good. We tend to try to we like writing hooky stuff, things that people could remember, and it makes it more enjoyable.
That song is definitely hooky, I'll tell you that much. It is also very progressive. I agree with you. It kind of caught me off guard, but I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because it felt different, but it sounded magnificent. It's definitely one of my top 3 songs in the whole record.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's awesome.
One last question for you. As you start to put this album maybe a little bit behind you and you start looking forward into future endeavors, where do you go from here? You talked about the EP. Is the EP the next thing online for you guys? Are you already thinking about the next full-length record? Or are you just going to take some time to enjoy what Fear City has brought to you?
So right now, if you look at our track record, in about 6 years, we've released 4 albums, roughly 6-7 years. So that's roughly translates to about one every 2 years. So we love writing. We love writing. We love recording. It's a different a set of gears than performing live, of course. And it allows us to create when we want, how we want, like that. We're always thinking about creating. As far as if the EP is going to come next, we don't know. I'm not really involved with that aspect of it. Our guitar player, Marcus Ule, he's actually, he's been talking about that, and he discusses that with our label. If they decide they want to do that, that's fine. If not, that's fine. But we have a bunch of songs that haven't been heard yet. That would be really cool. We're also big Goblin fans. I don't know if you ever heard of that band. Mario Argento, a lot of the film scores were done by Goblin, and Goblin, we actually covered 2 Goblin songs that were bonus tracks along the line, and really cool stuff. So we're really looking forward one day to this EP. We would love to continue this whole concept and write more songs and write more albums. It also depends on how everybody feels in the group, and as of right now, I believe everybody does feel really happy and positive about where everything has come to. There's also ideas to release some graphic novels to correlate to each album. And also there's talks about possibly creating a screenplay for possibly a series that could be shot down the road for the story.
Oh, now you're going like from good to better to like outstanding. Like things are just progressing on the right scale. Because I honestly think that the way you guys built these records, it's really incredible job throughout. Each single one has its own individuality, which is really important, but they come together so well that you kind of want to see them go beyond the musical realm into something a little bit different, not necessarily bigger, but something a little bit different. So that's really exciting.
Oh, I'm glad you think so. I'm very excited about it. And what's even more exciting is the artist that we've used for the last 3 records, Mario Lopez, more than likely would be the person to draw the illustrations in these graphic novels, which I'm very excited about because he's just a fantastic artist. And we all love what he's done. And we hope that we continue to work with him. And we'll see what happens if these graphic novels, we would like to release one for each record. And then, like I told you, with the screenplay, that's something that's actually going to be worked on as well. And we'll see if we can get, we can get some momentum with that as well, because that would be a great series where you can have, maybe for each episode of the season, for example, you could have one song from the album, from each album.
Yeah.
So season 1 could be Sweet Hollows, season 2 could be Man of the Seven Gables, etc. But each song could directly correlate to each episode, where maybe at the end of the episode, the song could play. And you tie both together. You tie both worlds together, the visual and the audio. That would be great.
I think would be freaking amazing, to be honest with you. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the way you guys build the records, the concept, the way you tell the stories, the way everything comes together. So to see it move from an audio, because the records really feel like an audio book more than anything else. So to move it from that realm into a physical realm, if you will, I think would be phenomenal. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you guys.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate what you guys do. Much respect.
Well, thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate you taking the time. So thank you to Troy, thank you to KK, thank you to everybody and them. I really, from the bottom of my heart, was an absolute pleasure to sit here and speak with you. And let's do this again soon.
Yes, we shall, my friend. Happy Halloween.